Okay, that's meal 1 and 2 done. Let's have a look at meal number 3 now. For this, we're gonna use the chicken. So, nice big fat organic chicken breast here. So first we're gonna slice the chicken. Chicken breast like this. We're gonna get about 4 steaks out of it. And then we're gonna tenderize it with our meat tenderizer here. The reason for that is we're gonna break apart a lot of those fibers. It's gonna soften it up, create it a little bit more tender. It's more succulent when we eat. It's not quite as kind of fibrous, which can often be the case sometimes when we pan fry chicken. You just tenderize the meat back and forth. Both sides. All right, next step is to season our chicken. But before we do, I'm gonna get the pan nice and hot again. Use a little bit more olive oil in there because we've got 4 steaks going in. Before we put them into the pan, I'm just gonna turn them over and just kind of get some of that powder, spices, and that flavoring all mixed in with each other. And as we pan fry this, we're gonna move on, take a look at our turkey and how we're gonna change that up from its original form. Given that our chicken is almost ready, let's finish off meal number 3. And for that, we'll use some of these frozen vegetable packs. Now, I don't really have a preference when it comes to vegetables. It's just easier to have everything prepackaged and ready to go. And that's all this is good high quality vegetables frozen so that they're ready to cook as and when we need them. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna put a small amount of water in our pan. I'm gonna open them up. I'm using whole orca, green beans, some cauliflower. This again just makes it really simple and easy to get everything that you need for your meal prep without needing to prep a whole lot of food that might not be necessary. So we're gonna cover that. Let it cook with that steam as well, hence why we put the cup of water in there. Let's start preparing to serve up dish number 3. Now you've seen we're changing up the protein, eggs, turkey, chicken, and tuna. And providing we follow the same sort of requirements, we can mix up our carbs, change them over, substitute them. You also get to eyeball just how much of each ingredient gives you the macronutrients, carbohydrates in this instance, compared to something like the potatoes, which makes it really easy to then soon be able to eyeball if you have this amount of roasted potatoes or this amount of yam potatoes, you know, give or take just how much you need to meet your carbohydrate requirement for that meal. But we're gonna keep them to one side. We're gonna use our yam potatoes here. I mentioned we're gonna add a little bit of cinnamon onto this. It just enhances the flavor of the yams, I think. So not a lot, but just a little. Here we go with meal number 3. And you can see just how different both of these meals look. Yet, if you see on the article, the proteins, the carbs, the fats are near enough the same, which means you can eat one meal 2 or 3 times a day. Or if you've got the time and you have the food available, you can mix and match and create several different recipes. But we're not done. We still got 3 more to go. Let's do this. Let's start with our turkey. We've got the brown rice cooking. We've still got potatoes left, so those are our carbs. I'm gonna take a pound of turkey, so this will give me about 3 meals worth of protein easily. So enough for today's meal prep, and then some left over that I can use tomorrow. I'm gonna put all 1 pound of our turkey in there. We're gonna add in our spices, a little bit of that original Criollo again. Not too much, maybe a teaspoon at most. Let's get some of that in there too. turkey, salt, pepper, spices in there. We're gonna add an egg, an entire egg. This is gonna help bind everything together, yolk and all. Now there's one more ingredient that we need to add in before we mix everything together and make our turkey patties, and that is this ground oatmeal, the same kind that we use for breakfast for that meal one. This is in replacement of breadcrumbs, and it really helps give everything much more texture, binds it together, and allows it to cook like those good old-fashioned turkey patties that you might get in burgers, which of course we can use these for as well, providing we meet our protein, carbs, and fat requirements. I'm gonna put all of that in there. Now, before we mix everything together to make our patties, we gotta get our pan ready, and I'm gonna use this copper pan, which is really great. It distributes heat evenly. I'm gonna put the rest of our vegetables into and put our greens to one side. We've got new pans here. I'm gonna use coconut oil for these. Before we add that in, there's one more ingredient that I want to add, this garlic. It's gonna be really quick. I'm gonna take out one of the clusters like this. All right, the garlic's in, hands are clean. We're gonna get stuck in there and mold our patties, which we should have about 8 decent sized patties here. Make sure that it's malleable, kind of flat it out in the palm of the hand. Turkey patty number 8. We're just about there. I said 8 decent sized, some are a little bigger than the other. Pan is nice and hot, so we're gonna take these and just spatula them in. Now the key to these patties is making sure that we cook them evenly throughout. So you wanna keep them moving around. So make sure that they don't stick to the actual pan. And if they do, just give them a little nudge with the spatula, like so. And we're gonna help them cook so they cook thoroughly through. We're gonna take a fork. Instead of pressing down, we're just gonna press lightly on the underside, just pricking them like so. Therefore, when we turn them over, we have those small fork holes in. Let some of that heat come through and cook the middle of the turkey. That rice is looking good. I want to show you exactly what I mean by fluffy rice. If we look at how delicious that rice looks, and all we did was salt the water. So you can see the water in there. I'm going to leave it on a low simmer, allow the steam to come up and cook the rice as well. Oh, they look so good. I'm going to turn one over right here. Look at that golden brown turkey patties. Definitely helped with adding that egg and that binding agent that we used courtesy of those oats. Typically, I like to include greens with almost every meal, maybe except the post-workout meal, which is typically some fast-acting sugars and our beast protein, get those amino acids and the fast-acting sugars into our system quickly. And maybe the final meal of the day, which we'll have a look at after. But everything from breakfast and all of our day meals include greens, vegetables, frozen or fresh, or mixed salad. Get a lot of that fiber in there as well. And we need about 25-30 grams of fiber each day throughout our meal. So if we're not including this, where are you gonna get that fiber from? Let's check on one, see how it's doing. I wanna make sure that when I cut it open, everything's cooked inside. Perfect. All right, nice thick turkey patty there. Let's serve the rest up. It's starting to really shape up as a tasty looking meal prep. Look at that. 3 meals, all different ingredients, minus the vegetables, different carb sources, which means we've got one more left. Tuna. How can we make tuna, something so bland and in a tin, taste that much better and look so much more appetizing that it fits along all 3 of these recipes? Well, let's take a look. Right, so the first thing we need to do is open our tuna. Now I've got this tinned, and this is tuna in water or brine, which is seawater. Much healthier than in sunflower oil or other fats, which add those extra calories and fats. You might think sunflower oil is, well, that's a healthy fat, isn't it? We're talking about optimum sources of those macronutrients. So when you have fat from somewhere, you're gonna take that out of the requirement for that meal. But is it really the optimal source for fat? Sunflower oil or something else like our flaxseed oil or udo's oil? It's gonna be a much better choice. So we're gonna strip everything down, take what we need, and add in the other things that we need rather than just sticking with any of the fats that might come with that. So 2 tins of tuna, this will give us our protein quota. We're gonna drain the water out the tins. Put that to one side. We're gonna use our pan that we last cooked our turkey patties. I'm gonna saute the rest of that spinach. Remember those olives that we used for breakfast? We're gonna make use of them now. I'm gonna remove them. Add these into our tuna bowl there. A little bit of black pepper. Let's do a little bit of steak spice as well. Do our Himalayan sea salt. Mix it all up. And take our sauteed spinach. I want to cut it up into some smaller pieces. Now we've got our protein in there, we've got our fats. What about our carbohydrates? Well, as you've seen, we've got a number of options. We have brown rice, we have our cube jams, or we've got some of these delicious pan-fried roasted potatoes. You know what I'm thinking? I think it's the winner here. Again, don't become too concerned with if you're having just a bit too much carbohydrates or not enough. This is really our baseline. This provides us something to follow, stick with recipes, the meals, the amounts. And if you find that you're not putting on quite as much weight or size as you imagined, or you're not dropping enough fat, you can then go back to this and adjust it, but only by a percentage, 5–10%. If you're not losing weight and you're adding in cardio, take off 5% of your total caloric intake from equal amounts protein, carbs, and fats. Follow that for a further 2 weeks. If you're still not seeing any results, go back, take a further 10% off. Only then do you start to cut down on the carbohydrates. So make sure you include carbohydrates unless you really are following a low or keto type diet. But we'll discuss more of that in future kitchen videos. I'm gonna do this. We're just gonna spread our potatoes out a bit more. We'll just put everything here in the middle. Look at that, probably not what you'd expect from a tin of tuna. Wow, all 4 meals, all 4 very different looking dishes, yet they all hit our targets for protein, carbs, and fats with a good amount of fiber. Which means we've got our breakfast, our oatmeal and protein smoothie. We've got our 4-day meals, really easy to switch around and substitute. Let's have a look at our final meal of the day, which is typically something I'd have around about 9 or 10 o'clock at night, providing that my final meal, one of these, is around about 6 or 7 p.m. And what we're looking at is basically a slower timed release type of protein, a smaller amount, not the same amount of protein, carbs, and fats that we're getting, but just enough to tide you over from nighttime, sleep, to when you wake up and have your first meal of the day. So let's take a look at our 6th and final meal of this meal prep.